Hello and welcome to Instagram Reels training with me, Alana Light. I'm really excited you're here. It means that you're taking the next step into growing your presence on Instagram. Instagram Reels is an amazing content format to use if you're trying to reach a whole bigger audience. I'll talk about different types of posts you can make and how often you should post them towards the end of this presentation. But first of all, I'm going to cover some of the fundamentals about how you find a reel, what they are, and how you create and edit them for yourself. So as a quick summary, this is what we're going to be covering today. Now it's going to be a mixture of presentation templates, highlighting the key bullet points, and I'm going to switch through, when appropriate, into my phone and actually do demonstrations for you so you can see the buttons, you can get an understanding of how the reel setup is so that you can have your own phone with you as we're going along and try practicing it. The best way to learn is by doing, in my opinion. So let's get started. So first of all, what are reels? Well, to me, they sit within the different type of video content that's optional on Instagram. So I wanted to talk about that to explain how it all folds in. So as you know, video is a really important format of content for engaging and growing an audience. In Instagram, they started off with the first type of video content being available through IGTV. Now, this was originally their competitor to YouTube, and it's sort of evolved through then, but it's a longer form content. So if you do episodes on certain tips and trainings, and that's the type of content you might want to consider already be using. Next, they brought in stories. Now, these are the short 15 seconds. They only last for 24 hours. So it's an easy way to share highlights and quick things that are going on in people's lives and businesses. And then lastly, during 2020, they brought out Reels. Now, initially thought of as a competitor to TikTok, short videos that are meant to be entertaining and engaging again. Now, the best thing for me about Reels is that it's a brilliant way to get discovered by new accounts. So if you're here to grow your audience and find a new audience demographic, then Reels is a brilliant format of content you should be doing today. So let's start off first of all about understanding how you can find Reels. Now, I'm sure you've all come across them in different ways, but again, if you're doing some research and that's the place I recommend you start, then it's important to understand where they can be found. So I'm going to switch over to my phone in a minute. I'm going to show you these three predominant ways that you can find Reels in Instagram. First of all is directly in your feed, the ones Instagram presents to you. You can also then go through and look at from an account profile into a specific account that you've found of interest. And you can also use the explore function to discover new people yourself and get content ideas. So when you first go into your Instagram, you're likely to come through into your feed page and just scroll down what catches your eye and pay attention to that generally, the different type of content you like. But as I scroll down here, what I've found is I've come to this section here. It's a movie and I can tell it's a reel because of this symbol. So that indicates to me it's a reel. And if you left it on there, it's actually prompting you to go and watch more reels. So if I were to click on that, it's going to take me through into a specific reels feed. So you can do that. If you go through, you'll be driven by what Instagram is trying to, or what Instagram thinks that you want to see. So that's the first thing. Instagram will present different things to you. Secondly, you can go through onto someone's profile. So I've brought up my own profile here, and you'll be familiar with the standard grid. If you have created reels, and again, not until you create a reel will you get this symbol, but you will start to see this, again, that symbol indicating reels. If I click on that, you'll be able to see all the reels that I've created since it started. And by all means, go and have a look. So that's a good way. If you've discovered someone you like the reels content they're making or just want to see more, then you can go to have a look specifically on their reels tab. But I think really when you're first starting out, I think the best way to go to is to do this explore tab. Now I should say that you may see different options along the bottom here, but you're very likely to have this magnifying glass. And if I go into this is a good way to do any kind of research on Instagram. But for me, what you're doing here is up in this top right hand corner, there's the symbol again. This is all reels. And if I click into this, it's going to present me with reels that Instagram algorithm has pulled out and thinks is relevant or is something that I might be interested in. And if you literally just pull from the bottom, so I'm going to tap at the bottom of my screen and just drag it up, you can see this is all just Reels content. Now, I'm not following, I don't think, any of these accounts. There maybe some I'll come through I am, but most of these accounts I am not following. So I can go through and have a look. Now, if I wanted to, again, I said if you find someone you like to follow, then if you see down at the bottom, it's giving you an option here. So this person, look, a confidence coach, I can click follow directly. Right? If that's interesting to me, I can go directly on there and follow them. And this is why creating Instagram Reels can be a really powerful way to grow your audience. So just switching back to presentation, to summarize, there are lots of different ways you can find Reels. Look out for that symbol with the play bar in the square, and you can find them in different ways, either through the algorithm presenting it to you or from exploring and looking through other people's account profiles. So the next part of this training I want to talk to you is going to be about all the different options that are on the screen and presented to you. So this is going to be much easier through a live demonstration, but I wanted to present it here so you can see for yourself the different controls. There's lots of different controls when you first go in, and then when you get into creating, you're presented with other different editing options and music and text options. And then finally, there's different ways to share, where you put your caption, hashtags, and how to repurpose that content, all from within the app. So let's switch back to my phone and have a look at how this actually looks. So let's start off with how to create a reel. Now this may look different for each of you depending on how your account is set up. You may have a plus button at the bottom along here, but you should all have this plus button at the top, and this for me is the best way to go in and create a reel. So if I go ahead and press that, you'll see one of the options I'm presented down. There's the same consistent symbol. I'm going to hit that to create a reel. And what this does, it'll possibly look a little bit similar if you're familiar with stories. So it provides a screen, it's looking at me, and I would say you can switch the screen round, so you're recording, you're looking at my desktop at the minute. So what I'm going to do now is just take you through all the different symbols that are showing up here. So let's start at the top. This is purely some settings about how you can do different things, how you want the controls to look, and some camera tools, perhaps your left or right-handed preference. In the middle you can turn the flash on and off, a fairly standard camera option, and this is just a discard, takes me straight back out. So those are kind of the standard screen views. Also down at the bottom you'll see you have here, this is taking me to my camera roll, so I could go through and pick up something from my camera roll. And then you have all of the symbols that are actually recorded into the reel creation process here. So let's talk about those. At the top we have music. I will talk about music a lot more in detail shortly, but just be aware that that's what that button relates to. Next on the list is the timing. So Instagram Reels started off originally at 15 seconds, and they've extended to 30. There are some rumors they will make it into a minute as the maximum, but for me, for now, I'd keep it at the 30. Now I would just take a little segue here to say my advice is to always keep it the 30, because even if your reel ends up being a little shorter, it's better to have a longer amount of time available to you, even if you end up making a slightly shorter reel. Whereas if you pick the 15 seconds and you overrun, then it'll actually cut you off and not let you add in the 2 or 3 seconds. So I would keep it at 30 for now. The next one down the list is about speed. So it defaults to being as you are. So if you're recording and speaking, then it doesn't get sped up or slowed down. But you can go through and change if you want it to be half the speed, or you want to do it 4 times the speed. And if I just do a quick demonstration of the fourth, just so you understand how that might be used. If I just hit record quickly, and I'm going to move my hands around, so moving them, quite demonstrating, talking to you. Now, if I have a look at how that shows up, you'll see that it comes out really, really fast. It's been sped up to 4 times the amount of speed. So I don't want to do that. Let's just discard that. Okay, so you can alter the speed. I'm just going to set it back to being the standard. Effects, if you select the effects, you're going to get a whole variety of options down at the bottom here. And I'll leave that for you to play with. You could spend lots and lots of time doing that. The only thing I would say is if you scroll all the way to the right, just go right along, there's actually a section here where you can browse effects. So this is one you can go through and have a search all the way through. There's all kinds of different things in there that might appeal, and you can be creative with some of those. So touching up is a relatively new one. I'm going to press and hold on here, and it just alters some of the. It'll have more effect depending on how your lighting, etc. is. I don't think it has a great deal of effect personally, but it's there as an option. And then finally, down at the bottom, you'll have the timer. Now this is really powerful and a good one to think about. I'm going to demonstrate a little bit how to use it to kind of explain what it is. At the outset, what it's doing here is it's telling you that you have a full 30 seconds you are able to use for your reel, and it's giving you a countdown of 3 seconds. So I'm just going to show you a quick demonstration. I'm going to drag that, so I literally grabbing on the handle on the right hand side and pulling it across, and I'm just going to have, let's say, the 4 seconds set timer. Let me show you how this works. So I'm going to hit record, and because I've selected a 3 second timer, you can see it's counting down. Now it's actually recording for me. Now it's going to stop at some point because I only wanted it to be, I think, 3 or 4 seconds. And then if I go back into that timer, what you'll see is it's used. It was 4.2. So the 4.2 has left, and it's telling me that I've used up that amount of time from my overall 30 seconds. So this is really good, for example, if you want to do a reel that is perhaps, the 3 top tips about something in your industry. So you're going to have your introduction, then you'll have your 3 tips, 1, 2, 3, and then finally you'll want to have some kind of outro or a call to action. So you can see there's 5 different pieces of information I want to get through. So by using the timer, I can be really clear that I keep it short, so I don't find myself, I'm halfway through talking about the second tip and my time runs out. Those 30 seconds do go incredibly fast. So if you want to, again, I wouldn't suggest overthinking it, but if you use this timer and break it down into your suitable segments, then it's going to keep you on track to make sure you get your full message through. And obviously just having the countdown, you can switch to 10 seconds if you like, but having the countdown means you've got time to prepare and get your words, or perhaps move your finger away from the screen if you've pressed the record button. So I think it's really powerful. Now, the other thing I want to just demonstrate to you with this is I'm going to set this timer again. If I go now, so I've got the whole time, it's going to count me down my 3 seconds. And if you see, I want to draw your attention at the top here. This pink bar is going across. Now that is indicating how much time. So if it gets to here, I've used the full 30 seconds. It's also telling me how many seconds I've got left of the overall reel. So it's doing a countdown. So again, if you're just to the full 30 seconds, it's going to tell me I've only got 5 seconds, I'd better stop. You can always stop at any time. And if you see now, the pink bar is showing me that I've gone most of the way. I've got a tiny little bit left. And again, that would show if you go back into your timer. So you can see I've got less than 3 seconds left at the end there. So clever way to make sure that you are keeping on track with your message. You're not going to extend the time that's available to you. But I would say don't worry about it, because there is some editing functions. And maybe what you'll end up doing is finding that you'll record a few and realize that you're a bit long, so you can trim them later. And I'll show you that in a second. So the last button that has appeared, as soon as I started recording my first reel, this align button pops up. And what that gives you is an opportunity to make sure that when you're between recording segments, you have an opportunity to line them up so that they look seamless. So for example, if I press it now, what's happening is you can see it's coming up with a shadow. If I move out a little bit, that is how my face looked as I ended that last reel. So at this point, if I play that video back through this line, at this point, that's where my head was. So if I want to go ahead and record the next segment, and let's say that this, by the way, is how people do those clever transitions. So if I wanted now to change my top, I could come back in, and before I actually start recording, I can move to approximately the right place. If I had a different top on, all you'd see as it switches in is that transition between them. So again, let me just show you. If I'm going to go ahead and do that, set the timer, I'd have the time to kind of line up roughly to where it is. Oh, it didn't set the timer. Roughly to where it is, and then it would be going. Okay, so that's showing you the main creation tools that you get on the front screen. And as you create each single segment, these all stay here fairly standard. The only one is the align that appears after you've done your first reel. Okay, so as you can see, what's happened down at the bottom is a couple of other options have appeared. So you've still got your main record button. I've almost finished up, so I won't do that. But let's say I've got my call to action and I've just kind of missed out on something. What I can do is go back and look at my individual 1, 2, and 3 segments. So if I select this button, what's going to go back, if I hit that, it's going to take me back to the 3 individual segments, and they'll play separately over and over. You'll see the bar at the top is just, might be easier to show it in the second one. The bar is just going from here, it'll go all the way to the end and keep looping until you've finished editing it. So you can edit each of them individually. And by editing at this point, what I mean is, I'm just going to pop back on screen here. What I mean when I'm editing in here is that I'm taking the actual individual recorded segment and trimming it down. So if I go ahead and click on this middle one, because it's the longest, I've got it highlighted, see there's a white bar around it, and I hit the scissors button. So what that has, you'll be familiar if you've done any kind of easy editing anywhere, what that does is it gives me the actual individual segment, and I can click and drag to bring in that segment. So if you look at the bottom of the screen and at the top of the screen, you'll see that they're both just getting a bit shorter. So I could make that shorter to there. I could cut out the beginning if I didn't like what I said at the beginning. And again, it's just making it all shorter at the top here. So as you're doing that, let's say I want to trim it, I would then trim that individual one. And now I bought some extra time if I wanted to add to the message. So let me click done and go back. So back into this screen, you'll see now that I have a lot more space left. So I could add. So the only limitation I'd pay attention to here is that you aren't able to change the order. So if I go through that again, it's not, in some editing tools, you'll be able to click and drag. It's the one thing I do think Reels, they might change, or it'd be good if they could change, but that becomes quite an editing tool. So you can individually do those. Now, the next step then is if you're happy with this, so I've done my 3, I'm going to leave it at this length. I then go through and preview to see how the whole video, end to end, out of it's not quite 30 seconds in this case, but to see how it all plays. And I should just say to you that I have muted this for the purposes of doing this call. So great. So now I've done my recording. I've edited down into the sections I want, and now what I'm going to go through is into the next part of the editing. Now this is where you can download it. So I hit download. That is going to save a copy onto my phone. Now I do recommend you do this because if you're particularly working on something and you go through and you lose it later for whatever reason, then actually at least you'll have the majority of the work here. It won't save any music tracks you might have added, but it's a really good way to just make sure you're staying on track of things. Next, you can do the music, and I do want to talk about this at this point. So first of all, I could change the camera audio. I'm just clicking and dragging. So if at some point I'd prefer actually my talking voice to be a bit lower because I want to put the music in. And this, by the way, will apply to the entire reel. You can't do this through the segments. If you want music, at the moment anyway, the entire music track applies to the entire reel. You can't have in between options of talking and music. So you have to decide up front if it's going to be to music and have it, perhaps really low at the bottom, or whether you're going to make it talking only, and therefore your demonstration, your talking is what's going to be coming through. But music now will depend on your account. It's an evolving thing. There are lots of different variations. They haven't quite got this sorted out. But at the base of it, if you are on an Instagram business account, you will have limited music options just because of copyright issues. So if you see, for example, mine, I can scroll down. These are all only music options available to me if I am searching for them. You can search through, but it'll be limited to you. I think the best way to use music, if you're in this case, is to find music you like on other people's reels and save it. And I'll show you how to do that shortly. But for the sake of now, you'll see I'm going to go through, and these are audio reels that I've saved from other reels that I've liked that I think I can put in. So I can at this point select an audio and play it through. Now what's interesting about this, and it won't happen to all of them, but in a lot of the music cases, you'll actually see the lyrics of the song. So I'm pressing and holding on the bottom and scrolling left and right. And if you see that what's happening is the music is coming through. So if there's a particular song with a particular lyric you want to have, you can actually time it into showing that exact one. So I thought it might be useful at this point to show you one of the reels I made where I used the music to get my point over. So if I just take off the mute on my phone, you won't be able to hear me talking, but if you have a listen to this reel I did, you'll hear that on the beat of no, that's when I do the pointing. So let's have a listen. So just kind of to recap what we talked about a little bit there, I'd encourage you to have a look. If you like this, you can see how you could make a reel for your own business out of this. So then try following the advice I just gave you at the bottom, where you could go down onto my reel, and if you click on this, you'll bring up that music and be able to save it. Now I've actually already saved it, so I'm not getting that option there. But you could save it, have a look at how other people have used it, and try making one for yourself. Okay, so going back to finishing off the tools that are available when you're in actually creating and editing a reel. So next one along from the music is a microphone button. And now here, when you bring into this, what you have is the options here where you can tap and record all over the video. So literally, same way you have the record button. If I hold that, the reel is going to play in the background and I can be recording my own audio over the top of it. Next one along is the stickers function. Very similar to how you see these in stories. The only difference really is there aren't as many options at the moment. If I scroll down, you'll see. But it's still worth thinking about whether you want to put in some of them. You could also search through and put a GIF in. So it can still be quite a powerful option to do. Then you have the pencil button. It's, again, very similar to stories. You can do different things, make different lines, select the dropper to change the color of the line, to be on brand, make it bigger, all the standard variations around what you can do with pencils, arrow tools, highlighters, etc. I'm not going to spend some time on that because I'm going to assume it's very similar to stories and you'll be familiar with that. So the last one here, again, quite similar to stories. You can have the text function where you can put in lots of different options. So I'm going to just type in a couple of demonstration things. So I'm going to make them a bit bigger so I can work with them with you. Same thing in stories, as I said, you can go through and change the color of that text to anything you wish. So just for the purpose of demonstration, the thing I want to point out to you here is you have to be aware of the screen size. When you're in here, you'll get the full screen. And if someone is looking at Reels, if they're in the Reels Explore tab, they will get this full function screen. However, if it appears in someone's feed, it will cut off. And so you just need to be careful where you place the text. Now, Instagram have tried to do some things to make you aware of this. So I'm just going to drag us up and you have to get in the right time. Do you see the blue line has appeared? That is telling me that's where it'll be cut off. So the advice is always keep your text below that line. And again, if you move left and right, it comes up. So just keep your text away from the edge over there, and similar thing, keep it away on the edge there. So if I was to leave that text in that position, that will be fine. It will show up in the right place when it appears on the grid. So if I was to leave that text in that position, that will work really well if someone is looking through an Instagram Reel and through the Explore page. The thing that you'll have to be aware of if you want to put your Instagram Reel onto your grid, and that follows a square format. And I'll show you a little bit more when we're sharing the different sharing options later. But while I'm talking about the text, I want to bring this up. So if you want to share a square image from your reel so that it goes on the grid, so if someone looks at your profile and they're looking at it, they look at the grid, you have to consider the square area that is built around here. So let's be a little bit clear about that. To recap, you can have your text, you can put your text anywhere you like. However, it's worth taking note of the guidelines. And again, they appear slightly higher on the bottom. The reason it's slightly higher on the bottom is because, as you can see, as I hold this, it's come up putting a ghosting screen of my handle and the caption and the video. So all of that information is there when anyone is watching your reel. So any text you want to overlay would get lost if it was interfering with that information. So look for the guidelines, and again, don't go too far to the left or right. So I'm just going to leave that there as an example. Once you've decided on your text, the next stage you can do with text, and this is where some of the clever editing comes in, is that you can have those come up at different times. So this is how, in that reel I demonstrated where you have the 5 different points, the points only appeared at the point I needed them to be shown. So that is done, and if you see down at the bottom here, you'll see that it's highlighting. If I highlight that, I'm now working on text 1. And similar to how it was in the editing field earlier, I can then decide when that's going to appear. So I'm going to assume I'm going to talk for a little bit before I want the first point to come up, and I'm going to drag and drop the handles of those to the right and the left. So what's happening here is over this timeline, if you look at the bottom of the screen where the orange circle is, over the entire length of this reel, that text 1 is only going to appear between the 2 white bars in this section. It won't appear on the screen during the rest of the time. Now, if you watch carefully now, at the bottom of the screen, that text 1 is graded out until it is in that white bar. So what I can do now is if I highlight text 2, and I want text 2 to only appear after text 1 has disappeared. So if I now drag and drop, keeping an eye on the text 1 on the top right hand side of the screen, if I keep going, you'll see at some point around here it disappears. So that now has gone. So text 1 is no longer appearing, so I can bring text 2 up. I don't want it to last to the end, and perhaps I'm going to add something later, so I'm just going to bring the other side in. Now, it'll stay graded, a little bit grayed out there. Again, text 2 is grayed out until it's in the white bars. So now if I just select done to show you how that looks, and I'm just playing that, keep an eye on the text. Text 1 comes up, it disappears. Text 2 comes up and disappears. There's no text. Okay, so I think at this point we'll just do a really quick recap. As we said earlier on, I want to talk about the on-screen options that are available to you. So we've run through all of the different controls, the length, the music, the speed, the line. Then we went into how to create a reel and how you could edit individual little video captions, as well as adding music at that point and adding and moving around text. So at this point, you have a reel created and it's time to take the next steps. So back here in this screen, as you'll see where we are, I'm now complete. I'm happy with all of the options I've done, my texting. I'm going to hit the Share To button. Now here, again, depending how you are, if you've already downloaded the video, that's great. If you're new, I would recommend at this point, just down at the bottom of the screen here, just click straight away and save it as a draft. And now you'll see it's automatically taken back into my profile screen, and if I hit the Reels button, you'll see all my drafts are here, and here's the reel that we've been working on. So what happens now? As you can see here, you've got the options to write a caption, you have an option to share your reel and where you want to share it to, and also tagging people. So a lot of the rules for this apply the same as they do for your grid or your stories. Put a suitable caption in. The advice is to try and put your key points into the reel itself with the text capturing that, but you should put a caption to backing up, or at least in the reel, send people to look at the caption if that's how you're doing it. Put the caption in, use hashtags, and talking specifically to hashtags when it comes to reels, unlike your grid, the bigger the better at the moment anyway. The reach is all about getting to a bigger audience, so you can use those hashtags which have the larger numbers because you'll potentially get in front of more people. However, still try to stick to relevant hashtags and ones that are relevant to your industry and your niche. So type in your caption as you would do otherwise, test caption, like that, and then your hashtags, social media training, and it'll come up. I'll take marketing because that's got 15.2 million posts. And then once you're done with that, and you can mention people in here. However, I said you can also tag people at this point, and you just go in, you tag them, and I want to put in, someone, my lovely photographer. Let's put Catherine in. So I do that, and then if you tag someone like that, they get the notification pop up in their messages. So I'm done on the tagging, and this is where you get the option. It's telling you here, your video may appear in Reels and could be seen on the Reels tab of your profile. You can also share to the feed. So you can toggle this on and off as you wish. So my personal opinion is it's good to share to the feed, but obviously depends on what the content is. The pros for sharing it to your feed as well is that it'll also appear in a different place. So if people are just scrolling through or looking at your profile, if they're not familiar with Reels, they might miss it, whereas on your grid, they like to see it. The cons, as I'd said when you were working on the text, is just to make sure you're clever about what you put in the center of your reel. So that comes to the final stage of this before you hit share. You get an option here to do a cover. Now again, at the time of recording this video, I believe that the most powerful reels are the ones where you can see people's faces and people's images or something key. So I personally have been generally picking from the reel itself, and I'd pick one where your eyes aren't closed, or it's got the main message if you're getting that over in text. You can slide through and pick that. However, if you don't want to do it, you can select down here to add from your camera roll. So when you've done either selecting from the reel itself or from your uploaded template, you would literally go ahead and share. And there you are, you've created a reel. So just to quickly go back to the presentation, I want to just again clarify that. So we talked about all the on-screen options through the live demo, through the different controls, how to create them, and the sharing. And I should just add, we talked captions, I talked about hashtags. I'm going to share a little bit more about that in the presentation shortly. And repurposing refers to exactly what I talked about. You can share the reel just so it appears in the Reels tab, or you can add it, include it onto your grid. You can also at that point reshare, repurposing again from your grid onto your stories. Again, it's also just a case of getting it in front of more people. I definitely encourage you to do that. Okay, so going back to the main agenda of today's training, as you can see right back at the beginning, we've covered through steps 1 to 5. I'm now just going to share a couple of thoughts. I mean, the what to post will be driven by your own content creation plan and your strategy for your social media, but I'm going to give you some high-level highlights around that and a few extra little tips around hashtags and how often you should post. So when it comes to what to post, these really should come from your social media strategy and your content plan. But either way, with all kinds of content, they generally can apply. You should be giving value. Think about educating your audience, but keeping them entertained. Make it engaging, somehow bring people in, keep them interested. I think it works really well to use hooks like the top 3 or how to make better content, things not to do, as well as quick wins. Talk about your favorite apps, but be inspirational. Try to find something that your audience are going to want to know. What is it that you are helping them with? Next then, I want to talk about the different types of posts you could do, right? Because one of the things people say is, I don't want to be on camera, right? On camera does work. People want to see people, so I'd encourage you to do that. You can speak with text, literally speak into the camera, or you can do like the example one I showed you where you're pointing to the title of the text. But you don't have to be on camera. If you don't want to be on the camera, you can show a graphic. Scroll through your website and talk about different points. Add arrows, use the GIFs in there to make it a little more interesting. But either way, whichever one you do, the different types of posts, think about your transitions. Be clever transitions, move around, keep interest by being in different places. And as I said, the music can be so key. So think about the popular music. What's trending at the minute? What are people listening to? I talked about this a little bit when we were in the reel creation, but hashtags, you can use up to 30. Try using the bigger reels because I do believe you will get in front of a larger audience, but don't forget to keep it relevant to your video. There's no point putting in hashtag dog if you don't even own a dog, for example. And of course, the most important question of all, how often to post? Now, this will obviously depend completely on you and your own audience, but generally speaking, reels are lasting a bit longer. People might get presented them over a few days. They are still promoting them. So you don't necessarily have to post as frequently as you would do to your grid or to your stories. But more importantly, you should be posting when your audience is online. Think about when they're online, check the insights to validate what you believe. And then I also suggest as a really good strategy, try and keep 10 minutes clear after you post it in order to be able to reply to any comments that are coming up. This really helps the algorithm trigger that this is an interesting post, and therefore it will potentially put it out to more people. So thanks. That's the end of today's training. There was quite a lot we covered there. I hope you understand now exactly how to go in and create a reel. You've got some ideas of what to post and how often you should be posting. If you have any questions, please do get in touch. I love to hear from people. And feel free to tag me if you make a reel. I can't wait to see what you make. Have a great day.